Now, the Northern Ireland Secretary, Chris Heaton-Harris, has said that there will be a snap Assembly election as early as next week, but he's not set an actual date. Now, this comes after politicians missed the deadline that was set by Westminster for restoring the devolved government, which hasn't actually functioned, remember, since May of this year. So what does all of this mean? Let's cross now to Stormont, where we can speak to GBNews Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie. Hi, Dougie.
How are you, Angela? And welcome to Stormont. It is a very wet and windy building at the minute. It's grounds. The building behind me is now no MLAs in it whatsoever, no ministers, because on midnight on Thursday night into Friday morning, that legislation came into place. And it is legislation that all the parties signed up to, that if there was no government in place 24 weeks after an election, that it would be disbanded and new elections were to take place. So Chris Heaton-Harris, the Secretary of State, did exactly that, but he did it after a threat. He could have continued that legislation. He could have got an extension on it for a short while, but he decided in his first outing as the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland to stand with Simon Coveney, the Irish Foreign Affairs Minister, because of course the DUP refused to come into government because of the protocol. They left this in February. They stood on an electoral mandate of not coming in unless the protocol was settled, and they agreed with Liz Truss that this legislation would go through the House of Westminster, then into the House of Lords, back into Westminster, and would be agreed to shut down the protocol in some ways if the EU did not take part in it. So this is what Chris Heaton-Harris had to say yesterday.
Firstly, this is a really serious situation. As of a minute past midnight last night, there are no longer ministers in office in the Northern Ireland Executive. Now, I will take limited but necessary steps to ensure public services do continue to run and to protect the public finances. But there's a limit to what the Secretary of State can do in these circumstances. I also want to address those who've talked about joint authority. It's something that we will simply not consider. It's not based on the consent mechanism that is threaded through the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. So we are where we are. I have limited options ahead of me. I'm under a legal duty to call an election within 12 weeks. I've had lots and lots of talks with all the parties and will continue to do so. And that I hear it when parties say that they really do not want an election at all. But nearly all of them are parties who signed up to the rules, the law that means I need to call an election.
Well, you can hear from Chris Heaton-Harris there. He is slightly miffed with what's going on because they tried to bounce the DUP into power, almost threatening them with an election. And to their horror, the DUP said, well, that's OK. We stood on this mandate. We can't get down from it. So we're happy with it. And he also pointed to those that also tried to put their frighteners on by saying, oh, well, that joint authority would be in place. He has totally denied that will happen. And then he spoke again, and this is what he had to say.
I completely understand that the big impasse for one of the unionist community is what is going on with the protocol. But as I continually say, the atmosphere in those talks has completely changed in recent weeks. And I am, as I said at the very top of this, an optimist, and I really do believe we can get somewhere on those too.
Okay, thanks, folks. Thanks very much. Thank you very much.
Dougie, we heard Heaton-Harris saying there that the feeling he gets is that neither of the main parties actually wants an election. And in the next hour of the programme today, I'm going to be talking to Baroness Kate Hoey and to the MP Emma Little-Pengelly to get a sort of political perspective on this. But where do you see this all going?
Well, if it goes to an election, it will become that Sinn Féin will turn it into a border poll and that the DUP will have it with unionists. But this is really an EU problem. This is to protect the integrity of a single market. It's about the EU not trusting the Irish to bring in goods that are into Great Britain from other trade deals that have been done, repackaging and put them into the EU. So you could actually say, if the Irish government are so sure there's nothing wrong with the protocol, it might end up that they have a protocol going into the EU to have their own goods checked.
Well, we'll have to wait and see, won't we? And certainly it looks as if there is going to be an election there, so it is still all up in the air, isn't it? Dougie, thanks ever so much. That's Dougie Beattie, GB News Northern Ireland reporter.